Now you mentioned how if someone's going through a bad patch, it's important to maybe even leave them or talk to them. Uh, how difficult can it become for someone who really can't even drop? Say someone like Shadab, who's the captain, and over the last 2 years he's come under a lot of criticism, both at the national level and at the franchise level, especially with his bowling and everything. So how do you ensure that the captain doesn't lose confidence? He's focused to the job and is able to cut himself off from the
No.
outside noise that is there. How is that process?
But as far as the outside noise is concerned, like that's his job. We can protect him from that. But like if he wants to protect himself, that's something that he needs to do. But the other thing, like when you look at his form, like the thing that really matters is that people within that dressing room know stuff that people outside that dressing room don't. So if you know that Shadab is like 60-70% fit and like after every net session he's coming to the physio to get his stuff taped up or like all of that stuff. So the guys who are around him know that he is playing even with like nowhere near full fitness. So in that case, when he still performs, like if he doesn't perform, people, the rest of the team try to like make up for him. So there is an understanding of like if someone's going through fitness or form issues. But if he does perform, that even like enhances his respect within that dressing room, that even in such a scenario, he is performing that way. With a lot of guys, it's not just like him. Like I remember in PSL 1, I saw Sami was bowling and a guy hit him. I think the game was against Karachi, might have been Ravi Bopara or somebody like that. Hit a ball straight at him. It hit him on his foot. He was bowling. So on his follow through, it hit him on his foot. He came out and I saw him like the physio came out with a bucket of like ice. He put his foot into that ice and he just started screaming because there was just so much pain. And so now I think it was the 17th or the 18th over. So he still had 1 over to go. So I'm now looking for like who will bowl the 19th over. So I go talk to Dino, what happens, who's going to bowl. Like we have a 1 death over to take out and this and that. And what are we going to do with Sami and stuff like that. And while I'm talking, I see Sami is running back onto the field to bowl his next over. And I see him, he bowls that final over and bowls a good one. And he comes out and I asked him like, when I looked at you screaming, I thought like you're gone for like a month or something like that. And he's like, I'm a fast bowler, like playing in pain is something that I just have to do. And that was the first year. And over the next 4, 5, 6 years, what I've learned is I don't think maybe like 1 or 2 guys aside, I don't think there's a single fast bowler that I've seen who in whose kit bag there isn't like more medicine than there is in the pharmacy, because between painkillers and stuff like that, that's the thing that you learn with a lot of guys, with a lot of cricketers. Like a lot of times the lack of form isn't a lack of form or a lack of craft. It has to do with like their bodies breaking down, and especially with fast bowlers, because like the thing that they do is such an unnatural thing that they come in like you. The thing also with cricket is because like you're covered from like pretty much neck to toe, so you don't know every single guy, like their knees, their shoulders, their backs are all taped up. They have like a massage session after every game because like this thing has been hurting since they had the surgery like a year ago. So once you are in that dressing room, once you see them guys up close and see what they have to go through just to get out, like get 4 hours out on the field, then you have a different understanding of like what he can achieve and what he's like what he'll pull out for you. And that's, you see a lot of cricketers on YouTube and stuff like that. Everyone talks about jigra and everyone talks about heart and stuff like that. And I never believed in that stuff until I was in the dressing room. And like, then you realize that what that stuff is. It's that stuff like going, just fighting through all that pain and fighting through all that stuff. But it's also like, you've built a plan like, this guy, if the X batsman starts going off, then you have to get Y bowler in because that's a good matchup and he can quiet him down. And then in the field, this isn't a story from our team, by the way, this is from another team. Like they had a plan of somebody bowling if the batsman went off within the power play. So they were going to bowl a spinner. So they gave the ball to that spinner and he's like, I don't bowl in the power play. I'm not going to bowl right now. So you're like, so then somebody else bowled and stuff like that. But like no one outside of that captain and that bowler and that coach would know what actually happened. But going forward, both that captain and that coach know that this is a guy that in adversarial circumstances, uh, he might not be someone we will completely rely on. So now a lot of times I look at teams with their selections with guys that they back and stuff like that. I used to get frustrated over that, like why this guy isn't performing, or this guy is a 22-year-old who's not performed for amount of time. Why does he continue to play? And then you look at him, you're like, yeah, it makes sense. And like MS Dhoni is the perfect example of that. Like he backed, say, Suresh Raina or Ravi Jadeja when pretty much like 1.3 of the 1.4 billion Indian people just like would swear at them. But what Dhoni saw in Jadeja is the guy that you see right now, which is a guy who's like, who will do literally even if he doesn't have the talent, he will do literally everything in his power to get the maximum out of whatever ability that he has. And those are the things that you sort of learn when you're in that dressing room, and then there's a part of you that wants to apologize to those cricketers and ex-cricketers, but then then you hate them a little more, and then you don't want to do that.
There's a lot of admiration for MS Dhoni in Pakistan, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like Dhoni, for me, like, I mean, people a little older than us thought about Ganguly that way. Like you won't see a lot of people in Pakistan who are like huge fans of we admire Tendulkar, but like no, there won't be any fanboys of Tendulkar. But with Dhoni and Kohli, like, because those guys feel like the sort of cricketers that we want. We grew up with those sort of Pakistani cricketers, and those are the sort of cricketers that we want. Like I still remember I did a TV show. This was like around 2015-16, where I went on a rant because there was some other journalist who was saying that the way Kohli behaves and how much he swears and stuff like that is like not suitable for the gentleman's game. You know, all that old school thinking. And one of the reasons I've always loved Kohli is because he wears his heart on his sleeve. He plays in a way which is like, as a Punjabi, I really relate to him.
I can completely understand. Also, just to tell you, he's grown up in my neighborhood. He's from Delhi. I'm from Delhi, and he's grown up in my neighborhood. So yeah, completely relate with. Also, what do you make of the stuff that people say sometimes about the gentleman's game? Do you think it's something that is just thrown around casually and doesn't make any sense? I certainly feel so.
I mean, I go back and forth with it because like when I am selecting a team or when my team is playing, I like every year they come up with the fair play numbers, and we're always like, we've won it twice and we've like second and third. And every year we go in with like, we're happy if we finish bottom of the fair play table, but top of the overall table. But because we've generally got nice guys, we tend to have like higher up in the fair play numbers. But like in general, that's not something like I take a lot of like attention towards. Like I honestly don't care about that. But there's also that thing like I earlier mentioned, like this is not a war. This is not like you have to win at any cost, and there has to be a certain level of respect, and there has to be a certain level of like. I mean, I'm fine with, as I mentioned, with Kohli, like he swears and stuff like that, but he swears in general. But if you are going to like, again, with Pakistan, there's a lot of Pakistani guys who are either Pathan or Punjabi, and we know like how they react to someone swearing at them. And in a lot of times in the PSL, like if you followed the PSL the last month or two, you've seen like a lot of guys chirping back and forth to each other with like batsmen and bowlers. And in every single one of those cases, whatever the story came out, the actual story is that it all started because one of them swore at the other, and like that's just not an acceptable sort of thing. So within those parameters, I feel like yeah, like there should be like, मतलब गाली तो ना दो, like at least keep it within the limitations of like the way you would have, like it's a competition, but like don't talk about somebody's mother, somebody's sister that way. Like that's where I sort of tend to draw the line.
Makes sense, and I think it's a good line to draw on, because it's a reflective of a lot of bad things which we really want to get rid of as a society. So and our cultures are such that we look up to cricketers as more than cricketers. So I think it's completely fair to expect them to draw this line. I am completely on board with this. You mentioned other thing, which was that you used to see a lot of former cricketers turned expert talk about the Jigra, the Foladi and everything. But I sort of have got a feeling that you're not particularly a fan of the analysis that they do on a lot of their channels, whether it be news channels or YouTube. So what is it that you have to say about it?
So I feel like it's case mein, there's a level of frustration there, because I talk to a lot of these guys who are on YouTube or on in commentary boxes and stuff like that, and you talk to them off the mic, because I worked as a journalist for 4 or 5 years. I did TV a lot of that time, so there was a lot of like studio in the studio, like when we're not on air, or like you're in the press box or something, and you talk to these people and their understanding of cricket is on a level that somebody like me will never have, right? And yet then you see them, the same guys who have this deep understanding of how a cricketer thinks and how cricket is run, and how a cricket match and everything within that is, and then you hear them on commentary or you hear them on YouTube, and it's like, this is the bare minimum, the worst possible thing that you could think of from your entire collection that you're going to present. That's where a lot of my frustration comes from, that if these guys were able to talk the way they would off the record, that would result in like a much more informed and much more knowledgeable fan base, and like a cricketing world in general. And which is actually true. Like you look at like sports around the world, yes, a majority of pundits and commentators are pretty mediocre, but if there's somebody good, if you look at the way Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher have done with Sky Sports in the UK with the football, and they've pretty much changed the way the discourse and the narrative around Premier League football is discussed over the past 8-10 years. Like the days of like Mark Lawrenson and Alan Shearer and Match of the Day to where it is right now. The way like 10 years ago, you wouldn't know like footballer coming from Portugal to England, they wouldn't know anything about them. Now they're discussing XG and expected goals and expected assists. Like that's just within, that is something that I've seen. And that's where my frustration with a lot of ex-cricketers comes in. Because like what Nasir Hussain does, what Mike Atherton does, what Ian Bishop does, they are also ex-cricketers, but they're amazing at their jobs because they all work really, really hard at it. They do a lot of research. They are up to date with the game. They are progressive. They don't become like in tune with the, like they don't become in love with the ideas that existed in like till 1997. Like T20, especially with T20 cricket, it's changing like every year, every day. It's because it's a new format. It's going to continuously change, and the guys who are good at it, the Athers, the Nasir, the Ian Bishops of this world, the guys who are good at it are good because they keep up to date with that stuff. So a lot of my like anger or my rants towards like what ex-cricketers say with like Jigra and stuff like that, it's because I get frustrated because they know so much more than I do, and I get frustrated not getting that stuff that they would know that I would never know.
It's something that I share as well, and I also keep talking about it on Twitter, that when you have more knowledge, you have knowledge of the processes that we can only imagine about. Like you and me can't, decipher batting technique, or
Yeah.
our trigger movement can change, where the head should be, where should the pad be, but you really don't see that discourse happening with ex-cricketers, even in India. You just don't see that. Someone like a Sunil Gavaskar can, actually decipher cricketing technique like no one else. But you rarely
Yeah,
see
yeah.
him do that.
Oh,
Also,
I mean, he is a meme and like it's a joke and everything. But look at Ravi Shastri's record as a coach. Like if you listen to him in commentary and you look at his record as a coach, can you actually believe it's the same guy?
you can't really. Maybe
So that's where the frustration is.
maybe it's also something to do with the kind of audiences that are there at large, that maybe they are trying to dumb down, which we can only try and think of. But moving on to another topic of cricket, you just recently had written a piece on Cricinfo about what all has changed for Pakistan cricket over the last 2 years, as to how they were the number one side not very long ago, but now they are nowhere near being the perfect side and may not be even the favorites going into the T20 World Cup. So, what are the things that you think they can do in a short time, and what are the long-term changes that they should be looking for in the Pakistan team setup?
Well, as far as the short term is concerned, I think we're pretty much that article from Cricinfo came about because I was thinking about like there was this discussion in Pakistan of like Babar and Rizwan were opening together, and like I had reservations of that, and like one of my videos went viral because they also had Abdullah Shafiq at number 3. So they were starting off with like 2 or 3 anchors up top, and I also always have an issue with anything more than one anchor up top. Actually, with Islamabad, we've not had an anchor for like since PSL 3 was the last time that we had, and even that was because Alex Hayes wasn't available. Otherwise, it would have been Luke Ronchi and Alex Hayes opening. So we've never really had an anchor like that's just not the concept that we believe in. But like with Pakistan, the amount of pressure and the quality of the batting that there is, you sort of need that anchor. But I had the issue of like you can't have Rizwan and all these guys together. But then I was like, rather than thinking like who's an anchor or who's not, I would actually want to go through the numbers and like look at the data, like because as I mentioned earlier, like I believe in the data because the data clarifies everything for you. So I looked at that. Like everyone wanted to talk about Fakhar or Shajil to come in as the opener, and then you looked at the data and they don't have any better numbers than Rizwan had. Like they do pretty much the same job. Yes, Fakhar and Shajil might hit a 6 for 90 meters, while Rizwan might hit a 70-meter 6. But at the end of the day, it still counts as 6 runs. So that's where that idea came from. And like I started talking to Usman, who was the editor at Cricinfo, and he's mentioned like expand on it further. And we had this discussion, and I want to expand on it further. Like the entirety of like Pakistan's T20 team, which is you look at the top 3, you look at the middle order, and then I started exploring the idea of why Pakistan succeeded in from like 2016 till 2019 under Sarfraz, and why if they are still doing the same thing, it's no longer working. And if they aren't doing the same thing, then how the game has changed and like everything that came within that. So like my thing with that is like there is no one thing that the national team can or should do. It's as simple as that they need to be progressive. They need to maximize the resources that they have. Like I can say to them like play like Islamabad United, but Pakistan don't have a Colin Munro. Pakistan don't have an Alex Hayes. Pakistan don't have somebody who goes at strike rate of 150. Yeah, all 3 of them go at over 140 in the power play, like Sterlo does as well. Pakistan don't have that, but within the resources that Pakistan have, Pakistan need to maximize what they have. Like Islamabad don't have a Shaheen Afridi, for instance, right? So like Pakistan do. So how do you maximize that guy? Do you use him as a 2+2 bowler, which is like he bowls the first and the third and bowls the 18th and the 20th, or you use him as a guy who bowls like 1 over with a new ball, and like then you use him as a middle overs, whenever you need a wicket, you bring him there. Or because he's so good with the new ball, you try to bowl him 3 overs in the power play. Like how do you use him? Those are the questions that they need to answer, rather than saying like they'll use him as a 2+2 bowler because that's the convention. Like the thing that I want with the Pakistan team isn't like that they should win or that they need to do X, Y, Z. That they need to experiment to at least try to see where they can like get an advantage. That's all I want from the Pakistan team. Like for your audience, I think the relevant thing would be India. Like the last 2-3 years, every time I looked at India, I would get, I mean, from a T20 team building perspective, I would get frustrated because I could see that they weren't maximizing the resources. And then you saw the England series, and then almost sort of like to deal with England, you saw Surya Kumar Yadav come in, you saw Ishan Kishan come in, and suddenly you looked at an Indian team which was actually trying to maximize its resources, which for a Pakistan fan isn't the best thing to see, but from a T20 team building perspective, it's sort of like once they do it, there is like a deep down part of me which feels like once India do it, Pakistan will have to do it, because it's sort of like, yaar, ab to wo bhi kar rahe hain.
No, but actually that series has been one of the very how would I say? It's been one of the series where India have been very proactive. They even dropped Yuzvendra Chahal and tried Rahul Chahar and kept bowling Washington Sundar even in the death. So India actually experimented a lot in that series, which are actually sometimes these experimentations actually took me back to how maybe ahead of the time Rahul Dravid and Greg Chappell were in 2006-2007 when they kept trying all those changes. And people don't realize it, but I strongly feel that what India got, in the middle order of Yuvraj, MS Dhoni, and Suresh Raina was a product of all those experimentations and opting to chase all the time. So I mean, you're completely right about it.
Was Raina already playing by then? I thought Caf was Raina already playing by then? I remember Caf being the
Raina debuted in 2005, but he was brought into the team under Dravid and Chappell, and then he had a few good knocks. He didn't make it to the Pakistan tour in 2006 2007, which is probably why you don't remember him.
Yeah,
but he made it to the side. So a lot of the chat that I've had with you is actually some sort of taken me back to the olden days when I just started watching cricket. Like how you mentioned Mohammad Sami, I started watching cricket only in around 2003 2004, and at that point of time he was one of the mainstays of the Pakistani side when India had toured.
Yeah.
So also you mentioned about Rizwan and Mazhar Arshad who was on the show, and he also mentioned that initially it was the bad idea to start with him, considering there were already anchors in Babar Azam and even Fakar doing the same. But now Rizwan has changed his game, so it may not be the worst idea. Now, moving on to another player, Azam Khan has now been picked up into the Pakistan side. Now, the cultures are such in subcontinent that when a player who's related to a former player is drafted into the side, people just talk of favoritism or nepotism. It happened in India as well when Stuart Binney was picked in the Indian side. It has happened with the Pakistan side as well when Imamul Haq was picked and Imamul Haq was the coach, and now Azam Khan is Moin Khan's son. So, what are the kind of expectations that we should have from him, and any message you would like to give to the fans in terms of how they should view him as a cricketer?
As far as the fans, I mean, it's a different thing from Imam thing, because like even with Imam, it's sort of like made sense because his uncle was a chief selector. But like in this case, with Azam, like Moin Bhai is with Quetta, he's got no job with Pakistan team. Nadeem Khan is with the PCB, but he's not really involved in like the selection or stuff like that. But my concern, like, I think Azam's a really good player. I think he's a fantastic player of spin. I think he's going to be, between him and Haider, Pakistan can sort of have a number 4, number 5, sort of like a Hafiz replacement, at least in the T20 game long term. Someone who can be really good against spin. My concern with Azam is a little more different, which is his fitness. Like, I'm of this belief, like, which you look at, say, what MS Dhoni had once he threw out Sehwag and Gambhir, what Mickey Arthur had when he came into the Pakistan team. It is like in Desi teams, in Desi cultures, you need to be almost fascistic when it comes to fitness, I feel like. Because it's not about like, you need to look like a model or you need to look like this or that. Not everyone needs to look like a Pandya or a KL Rahul, but like, it has to do more with the fact that this shows me how much you're willing to sacrifice for your sport. Because fitness doesn't affect your main skill. If you're a batsman, especially, it's not going to affect your hitting ability, for instance. But if you're batting with someone else who's a rotator, you need to still be able to get those ones and twos. If you are, I'll actually tell you a story in a little while regarding this. If you are in the field, then you shouldn't be hidden. The captain should not be concerned about that this guy needs to be at 45 fine leg, or this guy needs to be at a position which isn't a hot spot. We need to hide him. If you have all, and then also the thing that comes to like the rest of the squad, if 15 guys are fit and one guy isn't fit, the rest of the 15 guys are thinking, why do I wake up at 6 a.m. to do fitness and laps around the ground and then do yoga and then go to the gym? Why am I going through all of that stuff if this is the requirement? Like, one guy said to me, like, I'm going to gain a lot of weight now because apparently being fat is equivalent to being a power hitter in Pakistan. So like, this is the general consensus within like other franchises around the PSL. So that's my thing with him. I'm a huge fan of Azam, but for me, Pakistan should have said to him that you've got 6 months or 12 months, get yourself in shape, get yourself into a professional cricketer's shape, and then we're ready to go, because he has a natural flexibility. His father was a wicketkeeper. He has the genes for that. Sometimes you see him diving around and you can see that there is someone inside him who isn't that stiff or that anything like that. So in that case, he could be a very good fielder if he was actually fit. So my thing with Azam comes back to that, like it's not about who his father. I've never cared like who someone's father is, who somebody like that is. Balki we've actually been lucky in that regard because we only look at data and we only look at like what we see and what we believe. We've had guys drop to us in the draft because other teams thought that this guy was a Safarshi or this guy was a Parchi or this guy was like somebody's recommendation, and he would fall to us and we would pick him up because we didn't even know that story. And then later you'd find out like that guy was actually good. So like I don't think that those sort of things like those concern me or anything like that. To the point like now I almost think like, well, not father or uncle or anything like that, but if you're somebody's friend, if you're the captain's friend, if you're Osman Qadir playing under Babar Azam, for instance, you will perform well because A, you want to do well for him, and B, if you've been friends for like 10, 12, 15 years, you understand that person in a way that no one else can. You know what you can get out of that person. So like having those relationships, off the field relationships, is more of a positive than a negative, I feel like.
That's a very interesting perspective because we really never get into the pros of it. We are so focused with the cons of it. But you mentioned something which I think will hit home with the Indian fans as well, because Varun Chakravarti has been dropped on two occasions for not being fit enough, and there have been people who said that it's only a matter of 4 overs. Why can't you draft him in and hide him in the field? But India have been actually very strict with how his fitness standards are going to be. And I certainly feel that in the long run, it's something that that will only lead to developing a more stronger and a robust fitness culture, where everyone will actually keep working hard towards it and become better athletes. And the last 5 years have been
Yeah, so
testimony to it.
usme like I think Rohit is the only guy who's allowed exception to that. There's a lot of like famous stories regarding him in that regard. The story that I was going to mention that I just remembered. I was talking to Usman Khwaja like 2-3 weeks back, and about like fitness and stuff like that. And he mentioned like the 2016 World T20 game between Australia and India. And he said when Yuvraj was batting with Kohli, we were like in complete control because Kohli was dealing in only ones and fours because Yuvraj couldn't run twos. And then he says MS came in to bat, and then Kohli completely changed his gear because those ones became twos. Now the fielders need to be a little more inside the boundary, so those gaps are a little wider. So then basically just by converting those ones into twos, you completely change the game. By converting those ones into twos, then suddenly you can have 8 or 4 balls and still be on strike on the 5th ball because you had 4 twos. So he was talking about like how MS basically coming onto the field and his running changed that game and changed the way Kohli was batting. And those are things that cricketers understand. Like fans obviously don't understand that, but which is where I come back to, like, which is why, like, I don't, if a fan says like somebody is not fit enough, like somebody is not fit enough but he can still play, like, I'm like, yeah, fair, like, because you don't know. But if a cricketer is going to select a guy who's not fit enough for the 11, then I have my question. Unless you're a Chris Gale, unless you're an Andre Russell, because whatever problems that Chris Gale might have in the field, or like he can't run, he's going to make up for it. Don't worry about that.
Also, what people don't realize is that on Chris for a bowler, the maximum amount of impact that he can make in a game is probably 24 balls only. But if a batsman gets going, and especially someone like Chris Gale, then his impact can be a lot longer and a lot larger than what any bowler could probably do in 24 balls. There are obviously going to be a few exceptions, but you make sense. Also, Chris Gale's in the twilight of his career. You don't want to set a wrong example for a youngster, to be compromised on fitness. Just one last thing now. I think we've gone on and discussed quite a lot, and that example of the 2016 game between India and Australia is actually a pretty great one, because a lot of people discuss, that running, but what Khwaja mentioned to you is something which is actually a brilliant insight. Now, the last thing that I want to know from you is, since you're also the kind of person who's not the kind who would only post about cricket on social media, you also tend to discuss a lot about things other than which are cricket, which are more relevant to the society. Now, would you also want a lot of Pakistan cricketers or stars to do the same, and maybe stand for any cause which you think can only benefit the country in the longer run?
I feel like that's one of the good things with Pakistan cricket. Like, I mean, yeah, they aren't like supporting progressive causes or anything like that. But as far as like being something off the field, like that is something that, because of what Imran Khan did with his hospital and like less so with his political career, like there is that belief. Like you look at Shahid Afridi, he's got his own foundation. We've got Roman was really involved in the COVID thing earlier. Misbah's building a hospital, and like the guys are always like want to give back to this community and stuff like that. So at least that's a good thing with Pakistan cricket. And then in a lot of cases, like cricketers are in general a lot more progressive than the general society is. They'll talk about certain things that way. The way, like, perhaps they won't take a stand, but they'll in certain incidents they'll talk about like being brothers with the minority nations in this country and stuff like that. And also because like Pakistan cricket is one of those few things which is works across ethnic and like linguistic lines. So like it's one of the, and like class lines as well. So that really helps. But as far as I'm concerned, I've always had this belief, like when I started talking about non-sports stuff, I wasn't even involved in sports. So like I've always had that. But then I also look at guys like, say, Muhammad Ali, Bill Russell, somebody like that through the 60s. You look at what Socrates did with the Brazilian football in the 80s. You look at what LeBron does right now. And like pretty much like every modern sportsman is, you look at Megan Rapinoe with the American soccer team, and
Marcus Rashford,
the fact that she has, and then yeah, you come to England, you look at Rashford and stuff. I was just referencing like Socrates and like American guys, but you look at France and you look at places around the world, and guys like have that sort of thing. But at the same time, I also am like, you can't expect a sportsman to have opinions, progressive opinions, because a lot of them have regressive opinions. A lot of them come from that sort of background. But then they also should be allowed to, you know, express their opinion. And I feel like because sportsmen and like, because they have this standing within society, especially within Desi society, of like complete respect and stuff like that, that if you say something, if you say something is an internal matter, then that becomes like an understood thing, for instance, right? So like, but then I feel like even right now, Pakistani and like Desi cricketers in general aren't that vociferous, and I feel like there could be more. But then it's also like, this is the land, this is the culture where everyone talks about politics. So like a sportsman talking less than most people is probably a positive.
Makes sense. Well, it's been great talking to you. Really had a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it, and I really liked that masala or the tadka which you kept bringing in by using a lot of slang which you use, like using the parchi. So I'll be very honest, I hadn't known that parchi is a term that you use for someone who's come through a recommendation. Sifarshi I had heard, but parchi is a first. So there's something more to learn about the about the Pakistani slang than just jigra and dole shole.
But what I would recommend to everyone is to just go on Twitter and search Imam Parchi. You'll be entertained for like the next 1 week.
Well, I used to think that Indian cricket Twitter used to be one of the funniest lot, but Pakistan cricket Twitter might be close.
The thing that you have to remember regarding Twitter is, the thing with India is good. That's the thing. Like a lot of people there are there to see India win, to see basically this nationalist project, like the patriotism comes in and all of that stuff comes in. If you're good, you're not going to be funny. It's as simple as that. It's only like if you're watching a sport because you are a masochist, because you enjoy the pain of like watching your team lose over and over again in heartbreaking ways, that's where the humor comes in, man.
Yeah, actually, after the 2019 World Cup game, there were actually a lot of listicles and articles which said that the Pakistan team might have lost on the field, but their fans have won over social media. And who can...
What else are we supposed to do?
well, right? Hopefully, I don't end up doing the same for my franchisee team. Hopefully, because I
No,
did that.
I think I think the thing that they've done over the past like 3-4 years with like, because we pretty much like, to go on a tangent here, we've gone off on the same thing, because like in PSL 1 we had one of the 10 oldest teams to ever play a T20 game, and the last 2 seasons we've had the youngest team in the tournament. And this is, when I look at Delhi, I sort of have that empathy with them, because what they've done is the same thing, which is just get the best young Indian guys in and let's build from there. And I feel like the best years for Delhi are like, we saw it this year, but we'll see. I think in the coming years we'll see Delhi challenge Mumbai and CSK at the top of the IPL. At least I feel that way.
Hopefully, that is something which all Delhi fans wish for and hope to see in the near future. Like I said, it's been a great pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I've probably laughed the most in all the episodes that I've done. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope we see you again sometime. And I hope you thought that this was worth your time and you enjoyed it
Yeah,
as well.
absolutely, my pleasure, man.
Well, that was it from this episode of Gupshup with Gill. If you do like it, please share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you are interested into Pakistan cricket or want to know about Pakistan cricket, you can follow Rehan on Twitter. He doesn't have a YouTube channel yet, which might have become the norm with a lot of Pakistan cricketers. But you can follow his
That's
writings
not happening.
on Cricinfo. He does write once in a while, but whenever he writes it, he makes it a very good piece which is backed by data, which you would have gathered by now. So that's it. Do watch the other episodes if you like this one as well. And thank you for your time.